Have you wondered how to create the best experience for your clients in your business? Today, I'm sitting down with Tracey Choy, who is a short-term rental management company owner, to talk about how to give the best experience for your clients. So she not only manages over 60 properties in the Greater Toronto area, she has over 5,000 five-star ratings on different platforms like Airbnb. If you're looking to level up your short-term hosting experience or level up your experience in general as a business owner, this episode is just for you. Let's dive into the episode. So Tracey, thank you so much for being here. You've actually helped me on my journey when I started my Airbnb, because I know you were killing it with Ahil, and I think you were with different partners at the time. But right off the bat, let's just talk about, I think majority of the listeners are curious how to create a great experience. But before we go there, let's talk about the definition of what the difference is between short-term rental management and short-term arbitrage. So for the listeners, I think this episode is going to be into like two different parts, because not only are we talking about investing, like how to grow your money through the investment strategy of short-term rentals, we're also going to dive into the experience, how Tracey and Ahil is giving a phenomenal experience to their guests. So let's start with the definition. Like, people probably have a misconception, like Airbnb is probably something you do as an arbitrage, but how do you see it? What's the difference between Airbnb arbitrage and short-term rental management?
For sure.
Yeah.
So how I like to let's lay out an example.
Yeah.
So let's say you're the owner of a home, you're looking to do Airbnb. So you have a home and you want to look for someone who will arbitrage your unit for you. So I'm going to be the person that arbitrages it from you. What that relationship looks like is that you're going to rent out the property to me on a monthly lease. You have no involvement in the Airbnb business. So basically, is that I'm your tenant. You're going to get your monthly rent. I'm going to pay the utilities. Sometimes there's some negotiations around that. But essentially, whether my property earns a lot more or I'm losing money, that has no effect on you. Let's just say we've agreed that our rent is $5,000 a month. You get your $5,000 paycheck every single month, just like a landlord-tenant relationship. And you have the full understanding that I'm going to sublease this property on Airbnb. All the furnishing costs, all the other damage, if there are any damages in the home, that's all absorbed by me. It's my cost of furnishing. I'll cover the utilities, internet, and then there's some other discussion about expenses. But essentially, there's no risk to you as the owner in terms of whether the property does well or not. So let's flip to the flip side. So let's say it's not arbitrage, and the other side is that you hire me as your short-term rental manager. So what that is that you want to be involved with the highs and lows, mostly the highs, with Airbnb, right? So that you can earn more. So what it is you're not getting your monthly rental paycheck, is that rather we enter into a revenue sharing agreement. So
Interesting.
I would say on average, the market is around 15 to 25% of for the short-term rental managers cut. And what that will, and then at the upfront side of things is that the owner is responsible for the cost of furnishing. Of course, us as your managers, we're gonna help you and advise you on everything. We're not leaving you and being like, hey, just furnish it. We'll give you all the advice, right? Like, this is exactly how you should furnish it, but at the end of the day, all those expenses are yours as the owner, and so are the utilities and the internet and everything associated with it. But you're gonna be completely hands-off. Right? So you're not the one messaging guests, dealing with issues, preparing check-in instructions and all that. That's all managed by us as your manager.
That's fantastic. And where we are economically, like especially in Canada, it's like, not the best place. I think a lot of the landlords are looking at ways to say, how do I increase the monthly cash flow, right? Because majority of the people are not cash flowing, especially in this economic rate. So what are some of the common misconceptions when landlords approach you? It's like, oh, help me out. Like, what are some of the misconceptions that they sort of like don't realize about the game of doing short-term rental? And I think there's a legalistic side of it, but there's also the technical side of it. So maybe we'll touch on those two and sort of go from there.
For sure. I would say the first two things that pop into my head about when we have an owner that reaches out to us to do Airbnb and is very green to the area, the biggest misconceptions at the so first off, always, no matter what time of the economy that we're in, it's always that they always think it's a passive investment strategy. Of course, it's much more passive when you involve a manager, but if anyone was planning to do it themselves, it's very far from passive. Airbnb is basically a full-out hospitality business that you're doing. You have to make sure that you're always available to guests. You have to be very proactive with planning, organization, with guests themselves. So there's a lot of work involved with it. It's so far from passive.
I'm laughing because I went into it thinking I'm gonna do passive, and I realized, this is not passive at all.
Sometimes I call it like you're babysitting, honestly. So it's really far from passive. It's not just dealing with providing a great experience, like this guest, I'm gonna give them wine and they're gonna love their stay. There's a lot of fine details that you have to worry about. And then right now, I would say in the last couple of years is definitely the cash flow is not as great as it's been in prior years. Especially, I would say the heat of COVID, heat of Airbnb and short-term rentals was definitely COVID era. And a lot of people love to benchmark against COVID. But just like any other business, any other industry, there's seasonality, year over year, highs and lows, dips and highs. So right now I would say is definitely the cash flow's not there for most homes. Of course, there's opportunities in some pockets, but in the general market, let's just even talk about GTA, right? Yeah. It's not necessarily over, especially on an annual basis. That's what we really like to look at.
Right.
Because even on an annual outlook is that there's high season, which is normally summer, and then low season in the winter. In the winter, most of the case, you are losing money when you're comparing it to your carrying costs on the home. And then in the summer, you're earning more than double, triple of what it is. So it's great. But when you kind of smooth it over the year is that you will earn more on a revenue basis on Airbnb, but with all the extra expenses you have to incur over like traditional long-term tenants, you pretty much break even these days. And that is the sentiment that we always educate any new people that are interested in Airbnb because we always set expectations right.
Speaking of setting expectations, and we'll get to the legal side of that thing too, but from my experience, when other landlords approached me because they saw me do Airbnb, they're like, they wanted to see how much are you making? So when you say double or triple on the high seasons, I think that makes sense. But some of them, even the smart ones, they do all their research. They come to you and be like, this website called AirDNA, like, is this the right website to sort of see how other people are making money? And I'm sure you had that conversation over and over again.
All the time.
And is that accurate to see, or is it more professional to actually, pay for your time and get a consultation saying, I have a 3-bedroom in downtown Toronto. Is this feasible for a short-term rental management with you? Yeah.
So AirDNA is definitely a good resource just to start off with. You're interested in Airbnb, but you know nothing about it, right? So you just need some general understanding around, are you gonna make, let's say, 40,000, or are you gonna make 120,000, or maybe even more, right? So it'll give you a really rough idea, but really use it with extreme caution. And really the main reasons that we've seen why you have to use extreme caution is because AirDNA doesn't understand when you block dates and the owner's using it. So they calculate that sometimes as booked dates. So then it overinflates dates, right? So let's say that the owner's only actually booking for high season, but then low season they're staying in the home.
Right.
It will somehow extrapolate high season rates throughout the entire year, which is an overinflated number. And they can do vice versa, right? It can project your revenue.
Yeah.
So all to say, the best way is still just use AirDNA, use it with a grain of salt, really look into detail, go in, it should give you the specific listings as well. So dive into it, see if it's actually a true comparison as well. I think a big thing that people like to use for these revenue projections is that they're like, I'm a 5-bedroom home in Mississauga. Let me look at other 5-bedroom homes in Mississauga. It really varies.
Right.
You could be a 5-bedroom townhouse, or you could be a 5-bedroom luxury home near the lake, right? Very different expectations. And we've seen it time and time again, someone who is a really small 5-bedroom home is projecting their revenues to be the same as that other one with a hot tub and everything.
I'm laughing because I think I was one of those people. I'm like, 4-bedroom, yes. But then I had it under a semi, which is a very small area.
Hey, by the way, are you an entrepreneur that's looking to grow on social media?
you know you're really good at what you do, but you've been struggling that transition of translating all your expertise into content. Sure, you may have tried short forms, but you know that shelf life is short and it doesn't find the customers as fast as you liked. Some of the things that we're presenting here at YSBC is a program called Content Growth Partner Program. Essentially, it's designed for entrepreneurs like you who wants to get rid of the headache of the shooting, the recording, and the editing behind the content you want to create for platforms like YouTube. So if that's of an interest to you, go sign up in the link below. We have our wait lists going and it's building quickly. And if you're on the list, we'll get on a call with you to see if we're a right fit to be working together. Now let's go back to the episode. Very small area. And so how about the legality of it? And so we'll dive into the actual, so let's talk about the legality side. There's rules changing basically every quarter. What do you see? I know there's like, what's going on with the people? They're trying to make their own, I guess, the government's also trying to cash in and with the success of Airbnb. What do you see now with the legality of things like short term? And this is actually a tough question. And I know you may have the answer, you may not have the answer, but I think it's good to get an insight. Some people think like medium term rental, short term rental, play in between. What do you see? What's going on in the market with?
So right now what we're seeing in the market for sure is that definitely in the Canadian market, especially in Ontario, it's so just even unrenter friendly. I don't care if you're short-term rentals or long-term rentals, it's the same sentiment all around, right? The government's just trying to crack down on Airbnbs. For the lack of a better phrase, I think it's just that they don't want anyone to earn money, right? Because it really does feel that way, right? It wasn't before that necessarily people were cash flowing and becoming rich off of Airbnbs. It's
growing their wealth,
it's just that it did contribute to their carrying costs plus more, but then plus more, as any owner knows, is that if your AC breaks down, your roof needs replacement, that's where your earnings go to. It's not that they're able to now fund a whole different lifestyle from it, right? So, I would say the sentiment is definitely to crack down on Airbnbs at the moment. I think it kind of is the future for now in Ontario, unfortunately. But what it does is that it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to do Airbnbs at all. There's definitely still pockets and opportunities by far. Like we're very familiar with how the rules are, how the rules work, how you can comply and be competitive, and therefore still, rise above the rest. But you have to be really careful. Make sure you're monitoring the regulations. So for us, for example, a really helpful resource for us is Facebook groups. So like definitely wherever you operate, join those local Facebook groups. So GTA, Toronto, Niagara Falls.
So if you type in, what do you type in the Facebook? You just write Airbnb or short term?
Yeah, I think there's like Airbnb host community, stuff like that. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Those are really helpful. It always keeps you updated. Especially if you're in an area where there currently aren't any short-term rental rules at the moment, which is not a lot anymore. But if you are, make sure that that's even more important to be in those groups, because when the city does go through the whole process of considering legalization, the group can come together and you can attend those sessions held by the city,
the hearings,
and put your input. Again, I will say more often than not, the city's already made their decision. But it was successful though, actually, in city of Kitchener.
Right. I think that was a couple of weeks ago.
I think maybe a month. Time flies.
Right.
But yeah, very much close to it, and we were able to actually. There is no short-term rental rule that they decided on.
So Kitchener landlords, you know who to reach out to get started. Actually, let's jump in there. So let's say I'm a landlord. I'm listening to this. I'm like, this sounds good, and I want to have somebody manage it so that I don't get all the headaches, but I get the share of revenue. And I come to you, Tracey, and Ahil. Ahil is the partner who unfortunately couldn't make it today. But how do you start off? So like, how does the conversation usually work? If I say, hey, I'm interested in this, what are the steps that you take me through?
For sure. So first off is that we'd ask for pictures of the unit or the address so that we can look it up on House Sigma with prior photos. From there, we get a general idea of the unit, the layout, the finishes of the home, and we provide the owner with a general projection on an annual basis. Again, we never give monthly projections because that's just too granular. An annual projection is just more attainable. And then we also give them a general expectation on the cost of furnishing. So even a lot of times, some owners are like, oh, it's already furnished, Tracey. There's never a home that's already Airbnb ready furnished, because there's a smart locks that you're gonna need, a specific smart lock that you're gonna need. Security is the most important thing in your Airbnb. Outdoor cameras you're gonna need, a fully stocked kitchen, with nice stuff, like especially if an owners live there, their pots and pans are usually used up. So I'm talking about minor things, but a lot of minor things add up, just extra linens as well. So we like to give them, we're like, hey, to get this cross the finish line to be Airbnb turnkey ready, it's gonna cost you an extra $7,000 more. So we give them just those two numbers. They run their own numbers, right? Because they're the ones that understand the rest of their carrying costs, right? What their general utilities are, property taxes, and all of that. So then they can decide if this is the right move for them. We do always give them the precaution as well, just because, especially if you're green, and we just want to be transparent, right? Is that they have to have the expectation that that annual range, they cannot be month to month cash flow sensitive. So because there are some owners that don't have extra funds to put into the property month to month.
Yep.
So we tell them there are some months in the winter where you are expected to put some money, not the entire carrying cost, but just to be even conservative, expect to put $1,000, $500 in these 2-3 months, right?
And I think coming out of COVID, a lot of the landlords are thinking this is the next unicorn, that if you play this play, you're gonna get cash flow no matter what. But I think it's actually far from that. So yes, on the high months, you'll have a win. But on the low months, you do have to be, if you've never ran a business before, you have to learn how to control the risk. And so, I think that number.
I think a lot of people really get caught up on the shiny side of things, which is the revenue, right? And revenue is great when you look at Airbnb, but what people just fail to understand is, end of the day, what's most important, at least to us, even we own our own homes too, and we have investment property, is that I care more about my net profit at the end of the day. I don't care if I'm earning $100,000, but then my expenses drag me down to what kind of profit margin, right? So there's just a significant more of Airbnb expenses that you have to anticipate, right? I think some of the biggest ones being lawn care, snow care, even utilities to some certain degree.
Right.
You can't just simply project that, hey, my tenants that used to live there, they used to pay $100 a month, right? On utilities, that's how much. Sometimes Airbnbs, they don't care, right? So they're gonna use more, so definitely anticipate those extra expenses.
Let's pivot the conversation now to focusing on you and your journey, especially with coming out of, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you were finance background, like accounting, right? Yeah. And then I forget Ahil's background, but you guys both adjusted coming out of the 9 to 5 into this game. How was that journey like? And so we'll cover that for now, and then we'll go into the experiences and sort of end there. But yeah, talk to us about your journey coming out of 9 to 5 and starting this.
For sure. So I'm a CPA. I still have the designations. Ahil's a CFA. So he worked at a pension fund. I worked at a real estate investment trust in financial reporting and finance. So coming out of it, we both worked including our co-op terms, like in university.
Waterloo University.
Yeah.
Shout out to Waterloo people.
University of Waterloo.
Yeah.
I believe everything's so far in the background. I wish I had this prepared, but I want to say we have about 5 years of working experience in the corporate world each. So, you kind of feel at that point, you're like, wow, I know so much. Like, we've worked for really big companies, right? So it's like, oh, wow, we know how systems work. We know how a well-oiled machine should be and everything. And we've worked in the corporate side of things. Like, we're so confident, right? We can tackle it. Going from a really big corporate background actually to doing a startup is so different. There is so much more to it that we just didn't know. I think the long story short is that you have to be a jack of all trades in a small business. You are everything from the nitty gritty. We've cleaned units, we've fixed toilets, we've done all the dirty work to all of the big work that we don't even know what we're doing, as in like how to set up legal documents, all the insurance information that you need, what kind of policies and coverage do you need as people or as a company. There's just a lot of questions you don't know. And I would say probably the biggest challenge for us was definitely tax compliance. I think that's something that people overlook overlook a lot when we're starting a small business. It's like, well, even us, like I come from an accounting background, and I did keep things in order, but it wasn't even to the level that it really needed to be like at the end of the year, I just hire an accountant. I'm like, hey, here are my documents, file my returns.
That's actually comforting to hear that coming from a CPA. It's like at the end of the year, I always claim, like my wife would always say, like, see, honey, I told you should have kept your books. But hearing from you, that actually comforts me. So thank you for mentioning that.
Oh my God, yeah. So and I think HST compliance was the biggest hurdle. It's something like we didn't really understand what that meant. Like it's just something, even for me as a CPA, that's like a very specialized field. So I never actually did that. So I had no idea what we were doing, but it's so important.
What got you interested in making money with Airbnb? And again, Hill's a smart Asian guy. You're a smart Asian gal. Obviously, with properties, it's going to be an investment strategy, right? Where did that short-term rental sort of like play in? And then I'm sure the curious conversation that every Asian people are thinking, like, she's quitting her job and pursuing this new thing. Like, how was the conversation with your parents? Or at the dinner table, at the family dinner table?
Variation. Yeah, so let's see, where do I start? Wait, can you repeat the question again? I had it and I lost it.
Yeah, the question is like, what was the conversation with your parents when you sort of like said, hey, mom and dad, like investment is good, but we're gonna try this new thing. And why Airbnb, right? Like, why did that come into? Because I know we all love making money. Let's be real, folks.
I had a very surprise. So I definitely had the full Asian experience, thinking I would have the full Asian experience, that my parents would completely talk me out of it, think I'm crazy. I first told my dad, I will say. I think a lot of relationships are like that. My dad's just a little more chill. And my dad totally surprised me. I told him, he's like, oh, cool. He's like, yeah, you should do it. I was like, whoa, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, I think I think he was kind of coming from a background maybe when he was younger and he wanted to try something and he never did it, right? Because we always want to go back into our safety nets, right? Of like, well, I can't do that, right? Because if I do and I fall behind, then I'm screwed.
Like the family, that
yeah, he didn't say any of this, but I fully felt it from him. So he was fully supportive. I think I like almost cried in the moment. Like it was just so heartwarming to hear because he was like, yeah, you should do it. Like I never thought an Asian dad would say this, you know? He's like, yep, you're gonna regret it if you don't try, right? So I was like, thank you. And then my mom too surprised me. She wasn't as supportive as that, but that's fine. She was still very non-Asian traditional, I'd say. She did say, she's like, are you sure you wanna do that? Like your job's really good in the corporate world. I was like, yeah, I know. I was like, but I could go back anytime. She's like, okay, if you're really sure about it, you guys have thought about it. And I think it also helped because I quit first and then Ahil stayed in corporate for a year. So we didn't quit at the same time. So then at least we went from 2 paychecks to 1 paycheck and then eventually to 0. So it was more of a staggered effect to help balance that out.
Yeah, and your dad is a handyman. I think when I look at your Instagram reels and shorts, like your dad is always there fixing and stuff. I'm like, yo, that's such a cool Asian dad. It's so nice to know the conversation that you had and how much he supported you on your journey. That's really cool.
Yeah. I would say Ahil's parents too were really supportive. So we're all just very surprised. I think maybe we're just like in a different age as well. I think our parents have gone through the cycles of them working very hard too, and they just want to see us try things that we really enjoy. I think maybe they secretly saw how much we were suffering in corporate. They're like, you do need a change.
That's funny thing. I'm actually thinking about it as we're talking now, but maybe this is now the trend. The parents now see there is a younger generation making money or leveraging code or leveraging platforms like short-term rental platforms to get ahead. And like, why continue the suffering if you can actually, and obviously, maybe sometimes you do have to put in the check marks, like go through school and like get the degrees, right? Which most Asians, like we have our scars in the back. And I know, talking from Tracey is like, oh.
Relatable.
Relatable. Well, that's amazing. And I think we'll have you on the next episode to continue this talk about like your journey about, but let's now tune into the experience. And I think you were sort of hinting at it, how coming from a corporate world, you've understood how well systems worked. do you think there was a translation of what you've gained from the 9 to 5 into like applying it to giving a great experience for your guests? I mean, 5,000 reviews, that's a test, not only in English, but different. How many different languages does your team support?
I think probably okay. Ahil cheats a bit because if anyone knows, like he speaks Urdu technically, but then that's that like covers a couple of other languages. So
Well,
he kind of
what's Ahil's background?
Ahil's from Pakistan. So he speaks Urdu. That's his mother tongue, but I think then they technically know Hindi or understand it. And,
Yeah.
Gujarati, he also knows, like
Yeah.
can understand. So, we just kind of throw it all on the wall and hopes it helps. But it does help. Like, it's not that when people message us in those languages that like we don't understand.
Right.
So, yeah, it works. But I think probably 6 or 7 languages collectively with our virtual assistants.
So principle here is find a partner. So if you have an Asian and then Pakistani background, that's the principle, folks.
Yeah.
No, jokes
Don't
aside.
marry in your culture. Kidding.
Jokes aside, but like, yeah, I'm not a marriage counselor, so we'll take that back. But so I digress. What were we talking about? Experiences. Yeah. So first of all, the languages, you give a very well covered language coverage of like support. What do you think stands out between how you run your game between other Airbnb people? Because I know, like, I've seen it even in those groups. They're like, oh, I've been doing this for such a long time, but they don't scale or they don't have that 5-star rating. But you, like, if you go search up their properties and look at the reviews, it's incredible. It's like a stacked level 999, like, and I say it with the utmost compliment. I think there's a really special thing that you guys do. But share with our listeners what the secret sauce is. Like, there's obviously the review part. There's obviously like the onboarding part, and then like, when they go in, if something happens, how do you mitigate all those things that happen?
Yeah, so I think definitely is starting up your unit is so important. There's so many people that are like, hey, let's just get started with what we have right now because I want to get listed as soon as possible. Rather is that we're not trying to be like, no, you need to spend 3 months, 2 months on this, but it's that, no, even if it's going to take us an extra 2 weeks to set this up properly, that's more important. I think where people fail to understand is they're just so focused on setting up the unit once for one guest and that's it. Whereas we're like, no, this is an operation, right? This is, we're not just thinking about, can we host this guest that books right away? It's that when this guest checks out, do the cleaners have everything that they need in their reservoir in the home to set the home ready so that we are ready for a same day 4 p.m. check-in? And what that means is that, you have to make sure that you have extra linens because your first guest could soil your linens, right? You have
Yes.
to make sure.
Sorry, I laughed out too loud.
Have you experienced
Yes, I
this?
experienced that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so underrated. Or we've even had issues where the linens weren't soiled, but the washing machine actually wasn't working. Like, is it Murphy's Law, is it called? It's just when things go wrong all the time. So, is that the washing machine might actually not be working on the very first visit. So then it's really important to have all these backups. We have like a full, I think it's like an 80 item list just on consumables and linens alone that you need to make sure that you have because, if you're gonna, some owners are like, oh, let's just get the first guest in and then we'll get all the stuff in later, Tracy. But then that adds in stuff because owners don't understand the time window either. They're like, yeah, we'll get it in after. But then it's like, okay, but we have a same day check-in. So are you gonna be able to get to the property between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m.? Actually a little bit before because unless you're gonna do all that work because the cleaners might be done by then.
Right.
So, it's just better to set the home right, get it smooth operations, essentially what I like to call like a well-oiled machine. Everything's literally smooth operating for at least 2 months until we need to replenish items again.
Okay, so that's the back end of all the consumables like shampoo, linens, kitchenware, maybe extra kitchenware. Yeah. And then where does the actual experience of like, oh, if somebody books a place, like I'm sure you do the automation messages and some people might know it. Maybe you could drop that name too so that, because I think you guys did an episode together with Hospital. Yeah, can we? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, definitely on the back end of side too, there's like on the software side, there's a lot of things that we have to do when we first set up too. You have to hook up the smart locks
Yeah.
to the listing on Airbnb or if you're on other platforms to your channel manager, connect it to your pricing software as well. Make sure that you're priced correctly. Make sure that if you have a lot of people like to list on holidays as well, like start on holidays. So make sure that pricing
And
is
pricing is like
reflected
the
accurate.
nightly pricing.
Yes, that's right. Well, it's nightly pricing, and then you want to factor in like longer stay discounts of anything to help with occupancy and everything. So yeah, definitely. And then setting up those automated messages. And people often understate the amount of work that is. So even, for example, even for us, right, we have 60 units. If we're onboarding a new unit, it's not copy paste, right? Sure, we have automated.
It's not copy paste. It's like no.
I
folks.
wish. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for example, I will take my most similar home to the new one that I'm onboarding right now, but there's still very small detail. All the details change from property to property, right?
Right.
As in our check-in instructions are quite detailed. As in we're like, because we like to really dumb it down. We've gone through the whole ringer of people just don't understand very obvious things even sometimes, or they're just from completely different countries, so they're just not used to what a condo looks like, or even a single detached home, or what a basement duplex is, right? So we have picture guidance in our check-in instructions. So even if it's as simple as a single detached home and you should use the front door, we literally have a picture of our home from the front of from the street, and we circle the front door, and we're like, this is the door you enter from. So it's dumbed down to that level, where outdoor garbage is located, how you open the lock. Most of our locks are standardized across our properties, but some may be different. So again, it's really important to lay it out flat. So again, it's mostly I'd say it's 75% copy paste, but then there's that 25% of non-copy paste that you have to tailor to the property.
That you have to readjust. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so. The message. So let's say I booked your property. When do I get the first message? I think there's a sequence of messages that other landlords that are doing Airbnb properties that really overlook. And I think having a software background myself and learning from one of the other mentors who's still crushing it in the game, I learned it from him. It's like, oh, you send these sequences in different timings, but how do you do it? Like, so if I say I booked it, I paid it, what are the sequences that come into play?
So if we just take one step back, actually, our first automated message comes from when a guest first sends us a message, whether it's an inquiry or request, we have an automated message that goes through that basically says, thank you for your interest in our property. We've received your message. We'll be in touch with you very shortly. Very shortly is really 5 to 10 minutes. But why we do that is to keep our response rates on Airbnb high.
Oh, so see, that's another trick.
People think the response rate is an ongoing thing. The response rate is only calculated on your very first message response to the guest. So that's why we have that there. It just acknowledges it. But from our operational side is that we have a limit that we are responding to you within 5 to 10 minutes.
Gotcha. So the first message comes in. Wow, they say we'll be back in. We'll message you back.
Yes, thank you for your message. We've got it, and we'll be in touch.
Okay. What's the next
now
message?
let's just fast forward to you've booked the property. So then, right when you've booked the property, is that sometimes people's payment method have not been uploaded. So there is a feature on Hospitable or on many other channel managers, but I'm strictly going to talk about Hospitable because that's what I'm familiar with. Is that it will see that's awaiting payment is what it's called, and we have an automated message that goes through. It's like, hey, FYI, you need to update your information, otherwise your reservation will be canceled in the next 24 hours, which is the case. So it prompts the guests, because guests sometimes, once they book, sometimes they just log out and done with it.
Yes, they're like, I made
confirmed.
it. I'm ready for the trip. That's actually far from it.
When can I come, Tracy? So we have those types of messages. There's also a similar one for awaiting guest ID. The guest needs to submit their ID through Airbnb. Airbnb does the verification process, but that needs to be verified through Airbnb to get an approved reservation.
Right.
So again, those two are automated. Once those are confirmed, once you have a confirmed reservation, that your ID and your payment has been confirmed, we have an automated reservation confirmation message. So it lists out your dates, your check-in, check-out time. Because
Right.
again, people don't read your listing, so it's really important to lay that out. How many guests and any other important rules. So for example, in some of our cities is that we are required by the bylaw to, or by if you're in a condo, the condo management requires this information. Is that we need your name, your number, and your email, and maybe your license plate. Really depends, but if there are licensing requirements where you need information, we put that in that reservation confirmation message. We're like, hey, your reservation is confirmed, but we still need this information to release check-in instructions. So that's the other automated message. And this is the part too where, automation helps a lot, but then you need that 25% of the VA's help or someone's manual help where they come in and like actually make sure they sent it. If they didn't send it, follow up on it and all of that. Then we go to check-in instructions.
Right.
Check-in instructions, we always send only one day before their check-in.
24 hours or just
So it's a little bit more than 24 hours. So it's at 10 a.m. the day before
the
their
day
check-in.
before? Wow.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So why that is one is sometimes guests change their dates or completely cancel it. So we don't want to release all that sensitive information to them.
Like
so
the
we
house address. Yeah, that's true.
yeah, they'll see the house address, but just some of the other details on there. So we like to reserve that right. What was I going to say? So yeah, we send that information to them the day before their check-in. But what our VAs do, because software fails. So the most important thing in your check-in instructions is what the code is to check into the home, right?
Oh, so like smart lock
Yes,
code?
the smart lock code. So our software automatically creates a time active code for the guest. So it's during their reservation, but software fails. So and it's happened. So it's really important because the check-in process is your way to make the best first impression with a guest. If a guest can't get into your property, you are essentially failing. So it didn't happen a lot, but it has happened that the software didn't actually create the code on our smart locks. So our VAs every morning as part of their daily routine, they check what code Hospitable has created and they check it, they manually check it against the app on the smart lock.
That's so smart because when I was running my bit with the Airbnb, I couldn't get through that understanding how to do that. Or maybe I think I was trying to play too cheap. So I'm like, I'm just going to do it manually. And I only had one property.
No, that makes sense when you're only like less than 3 properties.
Right. So then let's go on to the troubleshooting. I think sometimes the guest experience, and we'll sort of land the plane as we exit this experience. I know I had terrible messages coming through. It's like, oh, this property had this issue, or the linens are not clean. Like, I'm gonna leave. Or some people like use
smell in the house.
Yeah, or they use it. Or sometimes it's terrible hosts. They come in, they know the rules, so they're like, oh, I'm just gonna trash this place, or things of that nature. So when you see a red flag messages coming in, something's wrong with the property, the neighbors are complaining to you. How do you keep cool, calm, collective?
That's really hard, and thankfully everything is remote. We get to hide behind our computers because it does not look calm and collective. You think you've tackled every situation after a few reservations, but you don't. Even after 5 years of hosting, we are always dealing with new situations. But really what it is you just have to just make sure you're assessing the situation and fact check information, so it's every situation's so different, honestly. So for example, let's use 2 different examples, but let's start with the stain on the sheets, right? First is that we always require, first acknowledge the message right away. I would say responding quickly solves the issue a lot of times. It really calms the guests down that they're like, okay, you're looking at this message and I understand. Okay, so what we say right away is like, hey, I'm so sorry about this. This is not up to our normal cleaning standard. Can you send me pictures of this so that I can understand the situation a bit more? Because essentially, in the background too is that we're like, hey, is it actually a stain or not?
Yeah. Or you made a mess and you're trying to get out of it,
exactly.
Which could happen.
Are you trying to get a refund or something? I will say most guests are not, luckily, and just things slip through the cracks.
Knock on wood.
Cleaners are human. We're human. It's easy to miss sometimes. And usually if they are small stains or some stains you can only see in certain color lighting or times of the day. We've definitely experienced this. We assess the situation definitely, right? So the picture gives us that context. Based on that situation is then, okay, we have to resolve this issue. And most of the times too, sometimes if it's not even the host's fault, is that a host's responsibility is to resolve the issue no matter what it is. So, right? So usually in these stained linen cases, if after they've sent us the photo, is that we're like, hey, no problem, we can resend the cleaner.
Cleaners, yeah.
Or if you are comfortable as a host too, is that you can be like, hey, go into my supplies closet, this is how you get into it, and please grab a new one. We usually don't recommend like telling them to like, hey, just throw it back in the washing machine. That makes them feel pretty not so great.
Right.
Sometimes the path of least. I think a lot of hosts are really against giving refunds, but honestly, sometimes that's the path of least resistance, and it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes we're like, hey, we're so sorry, we can resend the cleaner, or we can give you a partial refund. And the partial refund is sometimes it's just $50 or $75, and the way we think about it is a lot of a lot of operators are just like, oh, I'm so sorry about a certain issue. Let's say there was a plumbing issue. They'll be like, oh, I'll order food for you guys.
Oh, okay.
Food is easily $100 these days, right? With Uber Eats fees. So it's really not that bad in the grand scheme of things. So, and I will say 90% of the time, these are often overlooked, and the guests will still leave you 5-star reviews. They're like, no problem. I understand this happens and blah, blah, blah. I just want to make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. And thank you for the refund. That's all I wanted.
That's so critical, I think, because you mentioned the urgency to respond back.
Yeah.
And then you acknowledge to see how you can wrap around figuring this problem out so the guest feels heard. Yes. And I think sometimes the business owners are so caught up with doing the business, they wanted the customer service to be great. But I guess with the automation, that really helps, and your team of VAs.
Yeah.
Let's touch on 2 more points and we'll land the plane. And thanks for this. This is such a gold episode. If you're thinking about Airbnb or short-term rentals, parties. How do I prevent parties as a host or person that's managing the property for me? How are they controlling the situation? I think that's one. And then lastly, we'll talk about reviews, and we'll sort of end there, because I think that's the pinnacle, I guess the cherry on the cake. Yeah, icing on the cake. Yeah. So first question is, how do you
avoid parties?
Yeah, parties.
So our first way of avoiding parties is our nightly minimum. So our nightly minimum by default is 3 nights. Guests can't book 2 nights or 1 night off the bat.
Oh, that is so smart.
Yeah, that's the best way to avoid parties. And it also gives you more control over your calendar. When a lot of people are putting 2-night minimums, what ends up happening when they have a full empty calendar, your weekends get booked up right away. And that really screws up your revenue. People think they're doing really well when their weekends get booked up, but your weekends are the easiest to get booked up. So it's not really a flex, I will say. So, doing a 3-night minimum is best, because most people that are partying are not doing a 3-night stay.
They're either too broke or they got to go back to work on Monday.
Exactly. So even a 2-night stay is a bit risky depending on the dates. If it is a Friday to Sunday, then yeah, that is a bit risky. So right off the bat that's our number 1 rule. With that being said, is once we start getting bookings coming through and our calendar starts filling up, and or we are getting closer to the dates that are becoming vacant, is that we will reduce those nightly rates. With that being said, we rarely ever we will reduce it from 3 to 2 nights, but we rarely reduce it to 1 night, especially in our Toronto condo units. Sometimes the upside of the cost of getting that extra 1 night booked isn't worth it. And a lot of people think that they need to book 1 nights because that's what people are booking. But
like trying to make the calendar full.
Yeah.
Maybe it's getting more money, but you're saying it's actually...
That's not true. There's a whole pricing strategy to encouraging longer term stays, getting people to book full weeks over just your weekends, because once they take your weekends, you're held hostage, essentially, because there's very, very few people then that will just want your weekdays and they would want to add extreme discount.
I just want to highlight a principle that I think it's being drawn out right now, which is knowing the numbers. Like in any other business, there's always a numbers game of like how much you're selling your product or service for. But I think even with the seasonality, you understand how things work, and you're learning to create a constraint around the number. So like 3 nights, and you've played around with it enough to realize 1 bedroom, especially in downtown Toronto, is actually on the nightmare side of making money. So any listeners, if you're always avoiding numbers because you're not a math person, I think that's the lie that you're telling yourself. And I think we're all trying to make money here at the end of the day. So is there another way that you prevent people from partying? And then we'll talk about the reviews.
Yeah, I would say the second way is definitely our vetting strategies. So whenever people are booking, is that we have a big checklist, I will say, but I'll kind of highlight the ones that are helping us avoid these parties as much as possible. I will say the 3-night minimum, though, really eliminates so many, but then now we're talking about the remaining ones that still come through, right? Is that first, guests have to have really prior positive reviews.
Because the guests themselves, they are able to get reviews from the host.
Yes, that's right.
That's great.
So when a guest sends you an inquiry or request, it doesn't have to be a confirmed booking, you'll see the reviews on their profile, similar to how they see reviews on our profile as a host. So we go from there. If they have prior positive reviews, then it's usually safer, I will say. But if they are really old reviews, so anything more than 2 years, then we kind of dig in a bit deeper as if they don't have any reviews, I will say.
2 years timeline.
So if they don't have any, so one is, backtrack a bit too.
Yeah.
We always want the reason for the guest's stay.
Asking them what's making you come to visit.
What brings you to Toronto? Who else is staying with you? So if they have more than 2 prior positive reviews that are recent, we don't dig into it. They can just be like, I'm here for work and we're cool with it, right? And depending on the length of stay and everything, so we're okay with that. But if a guest has no reviews, is that we do dig deeper. So if you're telling me you're just here for work, then I'd be like, okay, where are you visiting from? Who else is staying with you? How many people are staying with you? Are you expecting any visitors? And we kind of go from there, but not too much. We're not trying to interrogate the guest. I think at a certain point you realize it doesn't matter how many questions I'm going to ask you. I will never get that level of comfort, right? Unless I'm meeting you, which is not going to happen. So, we really have a lot of comfort in just declining guests.
How do you politely decline?
Very
Do you say
easy.
sorry, like you look a bit sketch?
No,
You're not getting our unit.
No, it's just our vetting strategy. We'll just be like, hi, sorry, you don't have enough reviews for us to accept you, and that's our policy. Can you kindly retract your request?
Okay. Say it one more time for the listeners. Just that phrase again. I think that's really cool. So you say, sorry, you don't have enough reviews as to our policy. How do you phrase it again?
Yeah, so our exact line is, unfortunately, we only host guests with prior positive reviews. And unfortunately, you have no reviews or you only have 1 review on your profile that we see, and we will not be able to host you. We then follow up with them, asking them to retract their request, and we give them steps on how to do that because most guests don't know how. And why we ask them to retract their request is it's a bit better for the algorithm for the guest to retract than you as a host to decline them. Ultimately, there are very few guests, I will say, that would be like, no, you as a host should decline me, then we'll do it. But we always just try and do that first thing to ask the guest to retract it. And there's no fee or consequence to the guest for doing that.
Yeah.
So that's why we do that.
Okay. Tracey, there's so much more. The nerdy side is coming out, but let's talk about the reviews and we'll land the plane. What's the secret sauce to having guests leave fantastic reviews for you? In the last 5 years, almost 5,000 reviews. What's the secret sauce?
I think it's definitely always think about operations. Don't be short-minded in terms of this current guest. It's always about smooth operations and think about standardization across all properties, right?
Break that down for us, yeah.
Yeah, so standardization, what it looks like is that every home always has the same type of supplies, especially when you have a larger portfolio. That's even more critical, right? It makes RVA's life easier. We're not trying to make 100 exceptions for every single property.
Yeah.
So the cleaners have a specific checklist around how many dishwashing pods should they be putting out, how many kitchen towels. It's literally broken down to that level. And they are always given the listing link of the property that they're cleaning, because then they know how this home is restaged as well. We also like to tell them stuff like, hey, this is where the broom and the mop and the vacuum should be, and the ironing board, because these are things that
you're telling
guests
the guests.
No, the cleaners.
Oh, the cleaners.
Yeah,
right,
and
right.
so the cleaners have to make sure that they're taking photos for us because these are things that impact the guest experience, right? They like to, when they reach out to the host, they want the host to know these things, right? End of the day, even though we're a management company, the hosts always think of Airbnb as like, this is your home, you should know. Like, if I want to know where the ironing board is, you should know. So, with those photos, our team is able to be like, hey, it's in the entryway closet, or it's in the bedroom upstairs with the desk and all of that. That really, it's all these small things that add to that guest experience. The other thing is definitely a smart lock is so essential.
Smart lock?
A smart lock is
That's
really...
that's enhancing the
It
guest
does,
experience.
because
Wow.
if you have physical keys, that's like medieval times, one. And two is guests actually feel uncomfortable with that. They will ask like, who else has a key? Or if someone loses the key, then that makes other people feel uncomfortable, right? And or if your cleaner's then using that same key, then the cleaner may lose it, and then what happens then, right? So the smart lock just ensures smooth access, and especially if you're hosting larger groups, right? If you have a key, then are you supplying 5 keys if it's a group of 5?
Oh my goodness. You're
So,
right. It's a headache. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Smart Lock just allows seamless in and out access for groups that don't have to coordinate with each other. It's smooth process. If they can't get in either, we're able to unlock it. You can check in and out history as well. If your cleaner arrived, all of that really builds into that guest experience. I think I mentioned earlier in our check-in instructions, we are very detailed.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Some guests are like, whoa, this is a really long list. But we do tell them, we're like, yes, we understand, but we're like, it's very helpful if you can spend 5 minutes, just sit down and read it, and it'll help you. And every single guest will always tell you, like, they're like, you're right, this was really helpful. I don't think I would have known how to navigate your condo without it. So that really helps. And the other thing is just fast communication. Just responding quickly, just calms down the situation in everything, honestly. Or it's just giving them a call right away. I've had sometimes, and there are some things, even though we have VAs, the VAs can assess to like, hey, Tracey, this is where you guys have to step in.
Right.
The guest checked in and they've listed out all these issues, and at the end of their message, they're like, call me. So that's not a situation where we ever get our VAs to call. That's us as owners, that we are jumping into the business and we're saying, no problem, we call them, and just what happens is the guests just want to be heard. I've been probably on calls where the guest is ranting to me. I'm not saying a single word. The guest is just ranting to me for 45 minutes about all the issues. All you have to do as a host is you just have to listen, apologize for the issue, and figure out what the solution is. And we've had this happen time and time again. It's a mix of, some guests are really picky, I will say. Some of them are like, oh, I'm a host myself, I would never do this, and blah, blah, blah. And some that sometimes things slip through the cracks, honestly. I wish my business was perfect. We try our best, but things slip through the cracks, and as a host, we just have to admit it, and we figure out how is it. Do you just want to leave right now, or you want to stay and have these things fixed? Either way, I'm going to give it to you. Like, if you leave now, and I'll give you a full refund. It's fine. That's cost of business. And they end up not leaving a review, thankfully, because they're like, thank you, Tracey. I think you're taking my concerns very seriously, and I understand you're a business. I understand you're not perfect, and I'm choosing not to leave a review. So, definitely go on the call, listen to people, and that just helps so much with that guest experience.
The essence that I'm getting at is, as a business owner, you're really making friction be gone.
Pretty much.
You're really saying, I own this business, I know how to run it from top to bottom, and you're reducing the friction for the guests since the moment they see your property on the listing, on the website. I think that's fantastic. Last magical words you can share with us. What do you say in your thing as for them to leave a 5-star review? Do you say like,
right,
how do you thanks for their, I heard different phrases, but I want to see what your phrase that you use.
We like to call it our 5-star education rating guide.
Education rating guide.
Yes, okay. Because a lot of guests don't understand the rating system on Airbnb, right? It seems very similar to traditional hotels where you rate us out of 5 stars, i.e. a 5-star hotel. But that's not the same, right? Giving us 5 stars does not mean we equate to a 5-star luxury hotel. So we give them this education that Airbnb, hi. So first we start off with, hi, we always send a rating guide on the day of their checkout at 1 p.m. Why we do that is because that's usually what we think is the prompt. Airbnb sends the guests prompts to leave us a review. So kind of at that first notice, we want to start educating them because guests might leave a review right away. So at 1 p.m. on the day of their checkout, we send them a rating guide that says, thank you so much for staying with us. If they had issues during their stay, we want to re-acknowledge them. We're not trying to brush anything under the rug, even if it's minor. Sometimes guests are really nice and they're like, hey, your bathroom sink was clogged. It was fine with me though, but you should let your cleaners know, right? And so we'd be like, thanks for letting us know. We told our cleaners they're going to be addressing it. Hope that didn't tamper your experience
ruin your
with
experience,
us.
right.
Yeah, but if there's nothing wrong, just like, thanks so much. Hope you had a blast in Niagara on the Lake this weekend.
Right.
And we tell them too, we're going to be leaving you 5 stars. So, to encourage them, leading them that way. And then we end off with, we'd love if you leave us a review as well. And just to give you some background on how the rating guide works, anything less than 5 stars is considered a good rating, which is that there's usually major issues in the home, right? So we would really appreciate if you could leave us 5 stars or no review at all.
You mentioned don't leave us a review.
Yeah, we specifically say that because leaving less than 5 stars is pretty bad. So we'd rather you just not leave a review at all, and that's best case scenario if that's how you felt. But we do say no pressure, and we understand. We just wanted to share this information with you and how it can affect us, and that's how it works.
That's so good. After hearing all of this, don't you want to stay at Tracey's property that she manages? Tracey, thank you so much for coming on to this episode. Where can people find you, and what other exciting things are you working on at this moment?
So you can find me on Instagram at Airbnb Simplified. Send us a DM. That's where we're most active. Right now, we don't have a website, but I think that just really speaks to our brand reputation. Really how we've been growing is through word of mouth as well, and through our Instagram profile. But our website is coming, but reach us through there. Or you can email us as well. Our email is admin@donglecapital.com.
Dongle, like the dongle?
Yes.
Okay, Dongle Capital,
yeah,
yes.
That's right. So what the context is around the name of our company is that we're really your one-stop shop for Airbnbs. Just plug in, and we have all of our connections throughout to get you listed and well operated in that Airbnb business.
There you go. So if you have any questions, anything around short-term rental, you know who to find. I'll have you back on another episode. Maybe in Toronto.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Awesome.
We'll switch next time.